Lord Fuller.
I rise in support of my amendments number 50 and 52 on the order paper. Now, they say a nation is never more than three meals away from revolution. And in the 80 years since we had to dig for victory, we have developed ever more exotic tastes, which in turn have spawned new crises from which only a first world nation could suffer. Who couldn't forget the phyllo pastry incident? But while memories of hunger have faded, the need to put bread on the table has not gone away. Our nation sustains itself on the kindness of strangers, and the proportion of food that we grow ourselves has diminished and is now barely over 60%. Now, my lords, last year we had a nasty shock. The weather was bad, but a record number of farmers put land into environmental schemes, and only at the very last moment did DEFRA realise the jeopardy we were placing ourselves in. Those schemes were suspended and limited plantings resumed, but it was too late to stop a 25% reduction in the wheat production last harvest. Now, my lords, this year it looks like plantings have bounced back. However, that 25% fall in food production was a salutary warning about the fragility of our food supplies and a warning we should not recklessly discard our farmland. It was a wake-up call because when land is converted to solar production, it's locked away for a generation.
Sorry, I think the reduction in last year's harvest was due to the persistent wet weather, not anything to do with solar power.
My lords, if I may correct what the Noble Lord Earl Russell, what I said was that bad weather indeed played a part, but a major contributory factor was the volume of land that was placed into environmental schemes, not solar. I'm going to go on to solar in a moment, because we're talking about the future there, not the past. Now, my lords, when land is converted to solar production, it's locked away for a generation, at least 30 years, and the ability to farming to bounce back and repair the shortage that we saw last year falls away. That Rubicon is crossed. Now, my lords, food in your belly ranks as the most basic human need. And, my lords, when the chips are down, you can't eat a solar panel, to mix metaphors. Quite simply, these amendments make it clear that GB Energy should not entice, invest, promote or encourage land-hungry solar farms to be built on our best and most versatile land. Now, when I tabled similar amendments at committee stage, I contemplated that GB Energy should be prevented from buying grade 1, 2 or 3 land for the purposes of renewable energy production more generally. I invited the Noble Lord, the Minister, to meet with me and to discuss the issues that I raised, and I'm grateful for him for having done so. And in the meantime, I've taken soundings from other quarters. So as a result, I have adjusted my approach this time to limit the scope of my amendments to grade 1, 2 and 3A land only, and to restrict it to the promotion of solar panels alone, rather than renewable sources which are less hungry for land. I hope that by modifying my approach, the government might do likewise. Now, my lords, your library tells me that the grade 1, 2 and 3A land comprises 42% of the cultivated area of Great Britain. By difference, therefore, 58% of agricultural land would still be available for solar energy under my proposal. Just not the best and most versatile land that feeds us. 58% for solar is plenty to go at. It's about 12 Norfolks or over 2.5 Waleses. Now, last time, the Minister rejected my proposal on the basis that there really was nothing to worry about. It was not expected, he said, that any more than 1% of the land, much less than is currently devoted to golf courses, apparently, would ever be submitted for renewables, and this really wasn't something that GB Energy should be concerned about, and certainly not himself. On another occasion, the DEFRA Minister told your Lordship's House that in any event, grade 1 and 2 land wouldn't be part of the large-scale solar scene. Move along, nothing to see here. And in any event, this wasn't quite the place to debate these matters. Well, they might not be worried, but I am, and that's because the government has lost control of the numbers on solar. Let's examine those numbers. In Lincolnshire, the county does more than any other to put bread on our table. Already 2% of the land in that county is under threat. And worse, thanks to my noble friend Lord Frost, who is not in his place, we learn that the majority of the Heckingham proposal is predominantly the best grade 1 land under the rules laid down 60 years ago. Now, in response to a written question last November, the government told me that only 2 farms amounting to 1,400 hectares were being assessed under the NSIP regime. But, my lords, there are 5 such schemes in the county of Norfolk where I live, comprising over 7,500 hectares. We were told from the dispatch box that there would be no Grade 1 or 2 land included in the Seneca proposal. But there was. And warm words and soft soap have been spoken around the government's proposal for a land use framework. That's something that should be welcomed. But, my lords, they're only proposals, they're subject to consultation, and in any event, they would only be advisory, not statutory, and then wouldn't be something you could hang your hat on. Nevertheless, we now learn that this framework now contemplates that fully 9%, not the 1% we were assured, of our land, our farmland, will be subsumed under non-agricultural uses to meet our renewable energy and other environmental objectives. My lords, on so many levels, the government's rhetoric is at odds with the reality. They've lost control of the numbers, and in so doing are imperiling our food security, which is national security. Now, given that these government's promised indications have unwound so quickly, rather like a summer shower evaporates on a hot solar panel, my lords, I do not consider that the noble minister has earned the benefit of the doubt on this matter. For this bill is before us now, this evening, or should I say this morning. It is here and the now, so this moment is to ensure that ministers are required to give direction to GB Energy to take sufficient and proportionate account of our food security alongside energy security. I will not dwell quite so deeply as I did before on the reasons why we should be concerned for the uncontrol of solar panels on our food supply. Suffice to say that on the economics, a farmer would do well to earn £200 an acre from the fruits of his labour, having invested millions in plant and equipment and taking his chances with the risks of weather and the market. But by contrast, solar developers are offering him the chance to sit on the beach with an index-linked £900 per acre or more for the next 40 years. The incentive there is to go way beyond the 1% and put our nation's food security at risk. My lords, it is our responsibility to contain and to prevent the uncontrollable contagion, in fact, a stampede for solar on the best and most versatile land, leaving us vulnerable and ever more susceptible to the supply shocks and inflation on the food goods that every person must buy every day. Now, my lords, I'm grateful to the noble minister for facilitating a meeting with the new chairman of Great British Energy. At that meeting, Herr Meyer conceded that his company would be a private company, but one that would need to act in the public interest. Now, that was reassuring, although I was struck how it seemed to be news to him that saving £300 a year was within his remit. However, now that this important public principle has been accepted, I really don't see the prejudice in now enshrining those public benefits in statute to direct the Secretary of State to balance food security alongside energy security, to avoid the risk that the private company, established under the Companies Act 2006, with statutory duties to produce its own self-interest, will not get carried away on a frolic of his own, producing its own energy-related objectives wider and blind to the wider impact. So that's why I have presented this amendment in the way that I have. Amendment 50 is significantly less restrictive than the one I previously suggested. It follows the pattern in principle of a Government Amendment number 38, but it's related to ensuring that solar farms and energy security versus food security are correctly balanced. In fact, the appropriate balance through the Secretary of State's directions to GB Energy to balance between energy and food security and the public and private interests. And, my lords, I do not want anybody to misrepresent what this amendment is demanding. It isn't a ban on solar. Well over 50% of the land would still be available for it. It's not restricting renewable energies on our best land. I'm not saying that GB Energy should not be investing in any way, shape or form in solar. What I'm saying is that the best land should be reserved for food production and the less good can be preserved for other purposes. And it's in the national interest that it's done this way. The noble minister has said he has sympathy with my arguments, but this isn't the device or place to make these points. But I fundamentally disagree. As a private company with £8.3 billion burning a hole in its pocket, you would expect it to set the tone, to provide expectations, and to be the physical of expression of what the government expects. So this is exactly the right place and moment to shape our nation's future energy supplies. But if we do not do it here and now, where will it be done? And when? Or are we just prepared to risk further legislation to rein in GB Energy later, as we have needed to do this evening with the water bill that flows through this House? I'm very interested to hear what other noble lords may have to say on this matter. It's a serious one. And there's nothing more serious than ensuring our nation is fed. I hope noble lords, even at this late stage, will concede, as he has done so on the other similarly worded amendments, number 38, that this is a reasonable, sensible and proportionate way of ensuring that GB Energy doesn't get carried away on solar. But if he doesn't, I regret to say, even at this late hour, I'm prepared and minded to test the opinion of the House.
Proposed, after clause 7, insert the new clause printed on page 17 in the marshalled list.